Hey, welcome. I'm Dr. Fred Domenico,
And I'm Dr. Douglas D. Sienna.
and this is Resurrecting Our Freedom podcast. And today we are fired up because we have a doctor, another chiropractor I met at a seminar a few years back, Dr. Casey Pride. And, the more I learn about you, Casey, and the more we interact, and now you're down here in California, the more I learn about you, the more I'm fascinated with the things you've done in your life, and really not just what you've done, but who you are. And so you were just a quick outline of what we're going to go through. You were raised in a chiropractic family. You're actually a product of a chiropractic miracle. The reason you're sitting in that chair, became a chiropractor, had some serious influential events that actually brought you into sex trafficking and being, I don't know, what would you call, not necessarily a first responder. You'll have to tell us the details, but we're fascinated to hear those experiences and your motivation there back into chiropractic practice. And man, it's just a fascinating story. So I'm excited for us both to share this with you.
No, I appreciate it, man. It's an honor to be chatting with you.
Cool, man. So tell us from the beginning. Mom and dad were a chiropractor. You're a chiropractic living miracle. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's what I tell people, man, is I'm a chiropractic baby. Both my parents were chiropractors, and for the first 11 years they were married, they couldn't have kids. My mom miscarried multiple times. They were reaching a point in their marriage where they were looking at either adopting or going some other route. And chiropractic was a second career for both of them. They started chiropractic school, and within months of my mom getting adjusted regularly, it was boom, pregnant with me, and then pregnant with my sister and my brother, all within a 3-year period. So power was on, as they say. And she,
when it started, man, momentum was going 1, 2, 3. Probably like, finally, let's get this ship moving here, get it out of the harbor.
I have to say, one of the things that I've noticed so often is people come in like on the verge of adoption, and they undergo chiropractic care for no other reason other to understand the principle of chiropractic. And pregnancy occurs. It happens all of the time. I've seen it hundreds of times.
Yeah, my God. People have been through fertility drugs, have been through all those programs. Nothing. I've said this to Dalton, the guy right here. We said, I don't remember women that couldn't get pregnant or had multiple miscarriages that did not either get pregnant or go full term. I don't believe I ever had one in 15 years, and there were so many. And then I always say, don't tell them your chiropractor got you pregnant.
Yes.
Yeah, and I've gotten to see that too, which is, it's pretty awesome to be a product of that and then be able to pay that forward as well. So
yeah, that's so awesome. So then you're like, I guess that was your whole destiny. You had to become a chiropractor.
Yeah, and growing up, what's that?
That's okay. Go ahead. You came out of school. You went into practice.
Well, even before that, I grew up and I knew, and everything was different. I was so much healthier than the kids around me. I was the kid who, when cold and flu season would go around and everyone's throwing up at school and going home and missing class, I was the kid that never missed a day of school. And imagine being so healthy that you feel like you're weird, that you don't actually fit in. At lunch when kids would be lining up to get their medicine at the nurse's office, I never did. And so I've always kind of grown up different. And as I've gotten older, I really began to appreciate that. And but at the same time, it angers me, man. It angers me that to live a life of full expression of your innate intelligence, full expression of health, is to live in this tiny, tiny minority. And I hit a point after college where I realized just how rare of a gift this was. And I knew that.
Because you never missed school, did you get better grades, or you just kind of screwed up anyway?
I got good grades. Man. I had parents who definitely would not let me mess around. They made sure that I lived up to what I was capable of in school.
Yeah, there you go. My parents tried, but I didn't really fit in school very well.
My kids went to school, they got an award for never missing school, and I thought to myself, you know what? This is like no fun. I didn't start taking that and going to do fun things, but it's amazing how chiropractic care. The amazing thing is kids under chiropractic care versus kids under medicine. There's actually a study. There's such a difference in outcome. It's crazy that more people don't know basically the truth that we all know, which is, real quick commercial for you, which is so important for what you do in terms of communications, because we've been at this now over 100 years, and it's shameful the small number of people who can have the gift of the principle of chiropractic who don't understand it and therefore don't receive it.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's definitely no question about that. And I think what's today, December 1st, 2020, whenever you guys, viewers, are watching this, you know, I just saw studies last night about the kids that are going through depression, and they're serious. They're depressed. They're scared of the uncertainty. They're afraid that not only are they going to get sick, they're more afraid their parents are going to get sick and die, and they're going to be left alone. And I think it was one study I saw, 37% of kids under 10 years old are experiencing depression. I believe it was 32% are experiencing anxiety. It means an average 35% of American kids growing up in America under 10 years old are already depressed and anxious.
To add to that, just to add to it, 1 out of 5 adolescent females are hurting themselves. 1 out of 5.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
talk
terrible.
about, and because they're worried about their health, right?
It's a fear paradigm.
And we grew up, I grew up with an RN, but I mean, it's like what you're saying, you're different. Growing up in that world, we live in a bubble. And patients, and I know I coach, their patients have confidence. They bring their kids in that have confidence. These kids are being raised with chiropractic. They're not going through the same experience, at least with their health. I mean, the social distancing and the masking, that's a little different. I'm sure that has an effect, but at least they're not in fear of COVID.
Yeah, they're jumping through the hoops, and they know the hoops are ridiculous.
Yeah. So anyway, we're supposed to be interviewing you.
I'm with you on that, man.
Story. Let's get back to your story. So while you're in school, you went on a mission trip down to Dominican Republic.
Yep. Yeah, just went down there, saw firsthand the power of chiropractic. You know, we were taking care of people with only our hands, no nutrition advice, no corrective exercise. All we had were our hands and tables. And we just saw incredible miracles. And that trip changed my life. And I had a pull on my heart. It's like, I'm going to this country. This is where I'm going to work after I graduate. So practiced there for about a year.
Well, little did you know that was setting a stage for something much bigger. So tell us about that after you came back.
Yeah, well, when I moved down there to practice, I spent a little time there, and I remember being in a really crowded market. And this was not a touristy area. This was a local market. No people like me there. And someone came straight up to me with this young girl, probably 7 years old, pushed her toward me and tried to sell her to me for sex. And I remember just the shock and the powerlessness I felt in that moment of not being able to do anything for this girl. You know, if that had happened here in California, I probably know a number of cops personally who I could call up, tell them exactly where it happened, exactly what was going on, or do something myself. Down there. It was just a feeling of powerlessness like I've never known. And that experience just never left me, and felt a calling to go into that work, the anti-sex trafficking work, the anti-child prostitution work, and ended up getting into that.
Well, yeah. So let's back up a little bit. So there's a couple things skipped over.
Jumped ahead a little bit, huh?
Yeah, I can't imagine the feeling that you had. I mean, not only powerless, but I'm sure the compassion and empathy. What did you feel for that little girl?
Grief, sadness, just now that I've actually worked in that, I see what those kids go through personally. Literally being raped multiple times a day, and very often it's just completely out of desperation. They feel like they have no choice. So just the hopelessness and the feeling that that's all they're worth. That wasn't okay with that.
Right. So you came back, and then you thought, man, I need to go down there and do this. So you applied, and then you immediately got noticed. Tell us what happened.
Well, I came back to the U.S. I practiced in Dominican Republic for about a year, and then came back to my hometown, Illinois, Champaign, Illinois, started the practice there. Built that practice up. On paper, everything looked good. Practice was doing well. I was around my family, around my friends, great church, great community, but I just felt out of place. And I just felt this calling back to Dominican Republic. And I felt called to do that work, the anti-sex trafficking work. And I knew that the organization I ended up working for, called Destiny Rescue, had just started operations in Dominican Republic. And they were looking for international rescue agents, which are the agents that go in undercover and find and rescue kids from trafficking, exploitation, abuse, rape, slavery. And I applied. I mean, I just to see what would happen. And within 48 hours, I had a job offer to go down there and work in Dominican Republic as an international rescue agent. And I still had my practice. I mean, I still had everything. I still had a lease on my apartment. I still had everything going on in the United States. And I made a quick decision. Said, I'm doing it. And so wound my practice down, ended up selling just about everything I owned, and went to Thailand actually to train to do the work, did some operations in Thailand, and then straight to Dominican Republic.
Like, I mean, you're in Thailand, you say, well, to train, what's training like?
Training's intense, man. The first day we got there, and I can't tell you too much about it, but the first day we got there, they had us in bars, in brothels, basically looking for kids. I mean, the very first night we were there. So you're trained on all kinds of things, how to use hidden cameras, how to get information from people, how to, I mean, self-defense was a huge self-defense piece of it. You know, working in partners, situational awareness, and a lot of the self-defense we had to learn was actually defending ourselves from the prostitutes who were really, really aggressive. You know, anytime I've had to defend myself doing the work, I really haven't had any altercations with men who wanted to hurt me. It's always been really aggressive prostitutes. And so a lot of it was just how do you protect yourself from them? Because when you're doing this work, there's a really strict touch policy. Obviously, you're undercover. You're in brothels. You're working with, you know, children who are being trafficked and things like that. But there's a strict policy. Even though we're in there working undercover, we're not to engage in that kind of thing, right? And so there's very strict policy on how you touch these women, how you touch, you know, these children. There's no inappropriate touching. So a lot of the self-defense that you learn is how to, you know, when they're very aggressive with you, how to basically ward them off without really blowing your cover and making it look like you don't want to be there and without looking out of place. And so you're really learning how to fit in, how to defend yourself, how to be aware of what's going on, how to record things with cameras, and how to work with law enforcement, how to build relationships.
Question though, when you say aggressive prostitutes, why would they be aggressive towards you? Because they think you're a perpetrator?
Yes. So yeah, let me be more clear on that. So when I say aggressive, I mean you have women, you know, and we noticed this especially in Thailand, but Dominican Republic too, who are desperate. You know, they're desperate for customers. You know, they're so when I say aggressive, I mean they want to do anything they can to get your business. So they'll walk right up to you and grab you right in the groin, grab you right between the legs, or do whatever they can to get your attention to try and get you to buy them for the night. Okay. And some of these girls are kids, and so learning how to defend yourself from that without hurting them and without throwing up red flags like you're an undercover agent. You know, you have to sort of ward them off, but still look like you want to be there.
Yeah, right. Interesting. So you went through that training, then you went through Dominican Republic, and I don't know, you want to share a bit about, I mean, I guess you shared a lot of what that is, but how long were you in Dominican Republic? What was that like? What kind of things did you see?
Yeah, well, I originally signed a contract to work in Dominican Republic for 2 years. It ended up being shorter than that because of, well, you know what happened in the world. But I spent the period of time that I was there going undercover in different parts of the country. I mean, we went all over that country to areas that were known to have child prostitution, trafficking. Dominican Republic was trafficking a lot of women from unstable areas like Venezuela and Haiti. So they were getting a lot of women from there. So we did some operations, worked with the police to get a number of brothels shut down that were trafficking Venezuelans and Haitians in. And then just going on the streets in Santo Domingo, Punta Cana, Puerto Plata, really all over the country, finding kids that were stuck in prostitution of some form. And Dominican Republic was a little different from Thailand because Thailand was very well organized. I mean, it was like sex tourism capital of the world. I mean, people come in from all over the world just for prostitution there. Dominican Republic, they fly under the radar a little bit more because, you know, they get so much of their revenue from American tourism that law enforcement tries to kind of keep it on the underground, keep it on the down low where it's not as visible. So a lot of the child prostitution is you have to really dig for it. You have to really search for it to find it. So that's what a lot of the work was searching for it.
Right.
At that point in time, are these girls coerced into doing this, or they do this of their own free will for economic reasons?
It's more the economic reasons. So, I remember the first girl that I was involved in rescuing was, she was 17 years old. When I found her, I was working on the street, and there was this group of prostitutes working on the street, all of them dressed very provocatively. This one girl, though, was wearing a hoodie and looked underage, looked like she was probably 15, 16 years old. And turns out she was right around that age and was 8 months pregnant, was wearing the hoodie to hide her stomach. And she was still working on the streets because she was that desperate. So a lot of the girls we found, I mean, no one wants to do that work. Most of them, they feel like it's their only choice. Maybe it's generational. Maybe it's what their mom did. Very often they had a number of siblings. They were the oldest of 5 or 6 kids in their family. The family could only afford to feed 3 of them. The oldest child would go work in prostitution to make some extra money and pay the rest of the bills. So that's what we found most of the time.
Third world country.
Yeah. But then of course you do have trafficking, where you have you've got traffickers who promise women a job working in a restaurant or working as a bartender or something like that. They promise them a better life in Dominican Republic. They bring them in from Venezuela or Haiti, and when they get there, they take their passports from them. And then they basically make them work off a debt that they never really work off. And so it can look a number of different ways. I didn't really see much of the stuff that you see in the movies like Taken, where you've got drugged up girls in cells and things like that. That's not really that's out there, but that's not really the kind of work that I did. It was more finding girls that were doing it for their own free will because they felt like they had no other choice.
Yeah, I've heard that before, and we did that with Craig. We did a SEAL Team 6, retired SEAL Team 6 that goes out. I believe they're going to Mexico and pull sex trafficked girls up, and that's what he said too. They feel like they don't have a choice.
Yeah, and that's what a lot of the operations looked like. Is we'd find these girls and try to find some way to meet them outside of that setting, and just offer them a way out. And
what happens with these girls after? So after you get them, then what happens to them next?
So Destiny Rescue and a lot of the organizations that do this kind of work, like Operation Underground Railroad, there's aftercare. So we partnered with a safe house down there, and you rescue, but obviously when you rescue one of these children, there's a lot of healing, a lot of rehabilitation that needs to happen, because I can only imagine the trauma. I've seen it, but I've never experienced it. So there's rehabilitation and then reintegration. So whether that's placing them back with their families, if that's safe, sometimes it's not, because sometimes it's their own families that are pimping them out. But if it's possible to place them with a family or their family, that's ideal. And teaching them job skills, putting them through school, whatever we can do to help them to heal and then return to the world, in a healthy way, whether that's school or career or something like that.
Wow, amazing. So then you're down there, man, COVID hits, and then it's all of a sudden it's like massive lockdown. So you had to get out of there.
Yeah. So I was out on operation, actually. We were actually visiting the safe house and training up some of their staff, to deal with some of the girls that were being rescued, and working with some of the kids as well. And then doing operations nearby. And one of the other agents, who's a local Dominican guy, pulls out his phone. He's like, "Oh, looks like you're going to be stuck here for 2 weeks." It's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Well, the president is closing the borders. No one in or out for 2 weeks." And being in natural health and sort of understanding the pharmaceutical industry and
in the bigger picture.
Yeah, I just thought, bullshit, this isn't going to be 2 weeks. And I just didn't, there was something about this where it was like, you know what, I've seen people make a big deal out of things that were not a big deal, like Zika and, the virus of the year, right? That scares people into getting whatever the vaccine of the day is. And I just thought, when I first saw the coronavirus scare tactics and all that, I was like, oh, this is the next Zika. This is the next SARS. This is the next swine flu. And they're going to really ratchet up the fear. But once they said, we're closing the borders, I just knew this was different. And I knew it wasn't going to be 2 weeks. And And as soon as they closed the borders, or right before they closed the borders, they also put an arrest on-site curfew in place at 7 p.m. Ended up rolling it back to 5 p.m. And that curfew is still in place there. So I knew it was time to get out of Dodge. I had a couple of days to pack up. Santo Domingo Airport closed, which is where I lived, so I couldn't get out of Santo Domingo. I kept booking flights; they kept getting canceled. Finally, ended up getting a flight out of Punta Cana because they were letting a few tourists out. So basically, took everything I could carry to Punta Cana. I still have some stuff down there. Flew home.
So yeah, you look like a tourist. You're a tall white boy, right?
I mean, I fit right in.
Tourist.
Yeah, they were letting American citizens out, and they let me out. So, yeah.
So you came back. Now, all that, I mean, look at your face, man. You like got this baby face. You're the nicest guy. You have such a peaceful energy about you. Truly kind-hearted humanitarian.
Thank you,
But what people don't know, are you a multiple degree black belt? Do you study Taekwondo? You're doing sex trafficking. You have all these intense things about you, yet you have this demeanor of being the nicest guy, which you are.
Oh, thanks, man.
But like you're a lion on the inside.
Oh, I mean, I've always been interested in martial arts and just being able to handle myself and protect myself. And I don't think. I mean, yeah, I don't know what to say other than that, man. I mean.
I used to hate sparring guys like you because you got really long legs and a really long reach. So when I was boxing, be like, okay, I may have to eat one or two to get inside, but if I get inside, you're dead meat. But I may have to eat one. I might have to take a couple to get in there. So it's like,
guys like you, I'm just gonna kick, keep you away from me. I'm not gonna let you grab a hold of me, man.
Yeah. Well, that's funny. So you finally get out of there. You came back and you ended up in California.
Yep. I had been in conversation with Dr. Howard Cohn over at the Cohn Health Institute here in Costa Mesa. And I had planned on going there to work after I was done with Destiny Rescue. That ended up happening sooner than I anticipated, and they were ready for me. So when I got back to the U.S., I came and visited the office. It was right around when it was right before everything started locking down that I visited the first time. And then after things locked down and I moved back, he was ready. I mean, they were ready to have me and made the move. So.
Yeah, and then you started your own podcast, right? Because you've interviewed me a couple times about You're More Powerful. And so tell us about your podcast and what your purpose is with that, and give us the name of it.
Yeah, so the podcast, I just launched the podcast itself, and I call it the Powers On Podcast, and you guys will get that being in chiropractic. But it really started, I made a video back in April. It was just a live video where I talked about my governor in my home state of Illinois, this contact tracing program he was putting into place. And he had posted something on Facebook about it. I did this video about contact tracing and just kind of sounding the alarm on it. And I did not expect it to go viral the way it did, but it went from 0 views when I first put it out to 1.5 million views by the end of the week, to the point where I was getting recognized on the street here in California. And so social media presence just exploded. And at that point, I realized that people were interested in what I had to say. They were interested in my perspective on things. And I've been wanting to start a podcast for a while. So I just started interviewing guys like you and people who inspire me, people who I thought these people needed to hear from. And it kind of expanded from there. So I've switched completely now to a podcast format, and that's what I'm doing, putting out weekly episodes of that. But I was doing about three lives per week on Fridays, just putting as much content out as I could, sounding the alarm, what's going on with COVID, and just trying to bring people good information to make better decisions with, because people are just getting such bad information right now.
So we'll talk on that in a second, but I find it fascinating. You're in the Dominican Republic helping females who were abused and sex trafficked, and now you're actually back in California in chiropractic, where we are having an explosion of domestic abuse and domestic violence. And you're kind of doing the same thing. You're still saving lives, still protecting these young people and their mothers, and you're spreading the truth about what's really going on with COVID. So why don't you give us the segue into COVID?
Yeah, well, I mean, you said it best, man. I mean, I don't have a single patient or a family member of patient who's died of COVID, but we've had patients and family members who have been suicidal. We had a staff member who had a family member commit suicide just the other day. I mean, we're seeing just the awful unintended or maybe intended consequences of these lockdowns that are just far worse than this virus is. And yeah, working in healthcare, I do a lot of emotional work. So I do a lot of work now with it's interesting how this has worked out, but victims of rape and victims of people who have survived trafficking and things like that. I take care of those people in my chiropractic side now and the NET and emotional work side. So I still in some way get to serve that group, but more on the healing side, not the rescue side anymore. But yeah, with COVID, growing up in a chiropractic family, we've kind of expected something like this to happen at some point. And now that it's happening, I think people are paying attention to who's leading and who isn't right now. I mean, we see a lot of people buying into the mask mandates, buying into a lot of the social distancing. But my experience is that people are doing it because they feel they have to. They're not bought in, and they're looking for people to step up and lead and step up and actually be an example for them. And they're paying attention to who's stepping up and who isn't. And it frustrates me that more chiropractors aren't standing up, because when all of this passes, they're going to remember who did and who didn't. And I really think chiropractors need to step into that vacuum, because I mean, who stands for truth when it comes to health and when it comes to expression of life and when it comes to where true healing and immunity comes from more than we do? And if we're not taking advantage of this time to really be standing up and be leaders, we're wasting a huge opportunity, and we're just letting these sheep go to the slaughter.
Well, this is a time of darkness. And I feel it is, at least, and a time of a lot of persuasion for us to be in a state of fear. And the word says that we are to be light and we are to be salt. And I think right now, for those of us who are allowing our light to shine, if you will, it's going to attract a lot more people. So this is a time when leaders can lead, and those that want to lead, I think, are going to have lots of followers, because we are the ones who are going to give people hope. And once you give people hope, then they don't want to turn back to fear.
Yeah, there's a great quote I like, and I can't remember who says it, but it's the space in which you stand permissions others to do the same. And that's one that I do my best to live by, because sometimes just being you and doing what you believe is right, even if you're not trying to convince other people, is enough to give people the courage to do the same thing.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, you have a great story. So let's finish this on a lighter note. So self-empowerment group. You went through some training. You met somebody there. The funny story is you met this amazing, beautiful woman, smart, intelligent, gorgeous, blah, blah, blah. And, you thought she was out of your league. But then all of a sudden, years later, she gives you a phone call.
Yeah. So, I work with an organization called Clemmer Leadership and Character Development, and I was going through one of their seminars, and she was a facilitator, and yeah, I thought she was out of my league. She's a little older than me. She's gorgeous, and we became friends through that. And out of the blue, this past fall, I remember the date. I think it was September 3rd. She called me up in the middle of the day on a.
Yeah, man, you know what day it is. In fact, it was 11:39 a.m.
It was right around that time, actually. It was like 11 something a.m. She called me up and asked me if I'd be open to a date. And we had been friends for a while. It was
after you dropped the phone and then picked it up again, which
yeah, it definitely caught me off guard. But yeah, it was it's definitely one of those situations where when you know, man. 6 weeks later, we were engaged, and so. Yeah, it's moving right along. The only challenge is she's Canadian. She's on the other side of the border. It's not easy for us to get together right now. So we've actually, you guys are going to like this. We found like the one location along the entire U.S.-Canada border. It's called Peace Arch Park. It borders British Columbia and Washington. And it's technically this 40-acre park that's just like treaty land, which means Americans and Canadians can both enter this park without technically being on the other soil, and they can intermingle and hang out. And this park is just full of couples and families and people who have been separated by this border, who have come together probably for the first time in months. Like every time we're there, it's just this spirit of just joy and love and reconnection. That's where we meet. And it's only open till dusk. So at night it gets dark and we can't stay. And so at night we go a few miles away to a stretch of border where all it is it's just a little wire fence that goes up to our waist, and we can just stay there and hang out. That's usually where we have dinner, but that's what we're doing now until we can get her here. But
so you guys are planning on getting married real soon, get the marriage contract going. So then hopefully.
Yep, we're going. Yep. So we're going through all the required legal channels to get her permanent residency here. So we're learning a lot about that process right now. There's a lot of do's and don'ts that we didn't know about initially, and so we've got attorneys that are helping us out with just navigating the process. But God willing, she'll be here sooner rather than later.
So, I mean, in such a short period of time in your life, you saw the darkest of the darkest world, and then you find this blissful love. I think in like 3 years, you've experienced the whole spectrum of human emotion.
Dude, I tell you what, I feel like I've lived like 10 years of life in the last 6 months. It's really been wild. But yeah. I mean, asking her to marry me was the biggest but easiest decision I've ever made. It was easy.
Well, we wish you the best. We'll want to see pictures.
Absolutely. I've got some good ones. Our engagement dinner, you can actually see the cable fence between us. We're sitting there eating steak, she's sitting on one side, I'm sitting on the other, and it's just how we had to do it. So people keep telling us it's going to be a good story to tell our kids someday.
Cool, man. Well, how do you, what final words would you like to leave the viewers that now are, number one, final words, and then how do they contact you, podcast information, how do they follow you?
Yeah. Final words. Man. Stand up. I mean, those are the final words. What we're seeing right now is powers that be, if you give an inch, they're going to take a mile, and they're going to push you as far as you'll let them. Decide where your line is and freaking stick to it. And stand up for what you believe in. And when you do that, you're going to permission the people around you to do the same. But what's going on right now is there's so much that is just corrupt and evil and wicked. And the world needs people who are willing to stand up to that, who are willing to take the arrows, who are willing to inspire others. So let your light shine, however that looks, man. That's going to be my final word. If people want to connect with me, the podcast is the Powers On Podcast with Dr. Casey Pride. You can find that on all major podcast platforms, Spotify, iTunes. I'm sure there's others, but those are the main ones. Websites, drcaseypride.com. You can find me on social media at Dr. Casey Pride on all of them, Facebook, Instagram, Parler, Twitter, all that. So pretty easy. If you search Dr. Casey Pride, you'll find me.
Yeah, there you go. So we're going to sign off here in a minute, so hang on. Any final words for you, Doug?
No, I'm just really proud of you, Casey. I think that you're doing your life's purpose, and I think it's pretty evident, and I can feel the energy coming through the computer screen, and I'm sure our viewers and listeners are going to really be blessed by what you had to say today.
No, I appreciate that, man. It's a pleasure meeting you. We'll have to get together sometime. You guys are both local, so.
Yeah, we've gone out. We need to get together. Oh shoot, don't we have a date planned? Did we miss that already?
Yeah. No, I think we're doing that tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, tomorrow. Shit, good thing. I'm like, yeah, don't we have a date? We can FaceTime your fiance. Hey, you should go with us. You have a workshop tomorrow?
Teach tomorrow.
All right, that's fine. We'll catch him on the next time. Hey, man,
time.
You're true inspiration. You follow your heart, you follow your spirit. You're obviously a man of faith, and you follow where you believe your God's will takes you. And you don't ask a lot of questions. So, way to be a great example of shining your divinity through your humanity. And it's awesome to have a relationship with you.
No, you too, Fred, man. But I've been a fan of your work since I first heard you speak as a student. Got your book. I mean, love your work, man. So it's an honor. Thank you.
Cool, right on. Well, thank you guys again. Resurrecting Our Freedom podcast. Please share this, comment, ring the bell, do all that stuff. Send it around. This is one that certainly can enlighten the hearts and spirits of many people around the world. Thank you again, and we'll see you tomorrow night.